So today we are reviewing Medicom Mafex's figure of Batman as he appears in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. To be specific, this is a figure of Batman as he appears when he fights Superman in that comic book, during which he wears the special armor that he has built in order to survive fighting Superman, since Superman is super powerful. So the first thing we're going to do is measure the height of this figure. Here is my ruler. So let's see, this figure comes up to be 6 7/8 of an inch in height. So let's consider the aesthetics of this figure. This looks like it has leapt straight off of the pages of Frank Miller's comic book, The Dark Knight Returns. The colors and the sculpt are perfect. This looks like a true, accurate, three-dimensional rendering of Frank Miller's illustrations of this iteration of Batman. It's beautiful and it's perfect. Let me give you guys a good look at it from the sides. Let me have the cape sort of flare backwards so you can get a good look at the figure from the sides. This is the right side. Oops. This is the left side. This is the back of the figure. So it's a very nice figure. It really captures that sort of cartoonish look that Frank Miller used to illustrate that comic book, The Dark Knight Returns. It looks very nice. The colors, once again, are spot on. Well, based on what I recall. It's been a few years since I've read the comic, but based on what I recall and photos that I've looked up online, this is spot on. It's really good. So now let's take a look at the articulation. We can look up that much, which is pretty significant. When you combine that with the pivot at the middle of the torso, or should I say the diaphragm joint, you can have him look up by that much, which is pretty good. That's really good. So let me bend the diaphragm joint back to its default position. There we go. So let's talk about, or should I say, let's consider what it looks like when he leans his head forward, downward. We get that much range, which is pretty good. The bottom of his face does become obscured because of this, huge collar, so to speak, on the armor, but that's understandable, that's acceptable, but that's what it looks like. We can turn, or should I say, tilt his head to the sides by this much, which is pretty good. So overall, I'd say the head articulation is really good. We can obviously turn the head 360 degrees. Pretty good. Now, can we bend his arms upwards such that they become parallel to whatever surface he's standing on? No, we can't. And that's because of these pieces on the shoulders. They really hinder the movement. But, that's understandable, considering this is a pretty bulky figure. It's not something I would hold against the figure. You would have to completely disregard the fact that this is a figure of Batman in bulky armor. So this is understandable. I'm not going to hold this against the figure. Keep in mind that these shoulder pieces are movable a bit in order to maximize the articulation that you'd get. So, for example, if you keep these in the down position, because they go up and down, this is as much range as you get. But when you lift them up, you get a little more. So that's pretty good. So just keep that in mind. We can turn the arms at the shoulders 360 degrees. So that's quite good. Obviously that's the case for both arms. 360 degrees. Alright. Now we have bicep swivel? We do. We have bicep swivel on both arms. So that's really good. We can bend the arms at the elbows 90 degrees. That's really good. We can't get more than that because of the bulkiness of the armor. The elbows are double jointed, as you can see. You can bend them at both points, so they are double jointed, but the articulation is once again limited because of the sculpt. What about the hands at the wrists? Now we can turn them at 360 degrees, and we can bend them back that much. Holy crap. Sorry about that. I had that one on a bit loose. Let me put it back on. There we go. So yeah, we can bend back that much, bend up that much. That's pretty good considering that, you know, he has this thick piece of armor on his forearm. So that's really good articulation right there. Same thing for this side. Hold on a sec. Let me see which direction in which it bends. So go back that much, forward that much, backwards that much, forward that much. So really good articulation despite the bulkiness of the armor on the forearms. I demonstrated that it has a diaphragm joint earlier. So we'll just take a look at that again. You can go back that much, which is pretty good. I'll give you a good look at that. This is the default position. This is him looking upwards, or when the diaphragm joint is bent backwards. This is the diaphragm joint when it's bent forwards. So it's pretty good. It's not fantastic, but this is a bulky figure. But that's pretty good. We can rotate. Can we rotate at the diaphragm joint? We can rotate at the diaphragm joint. I mean, it doesn't sound too healthy, but you can do it. Holy shit, who fell? That was Ant-Man. Give me a second. I don't realize my fingers have fallen over like that. Okay. Now back to the review. Now, can we bend him to the sides? Not too much, but you do have some range. We have range at the diaphragm joint to bend him sideways, and at the waist as well. I'm having a difficult time demonstrating the difference because there isn't much clearance for my hands. But yeah, you can bend at both the diaphragm joint and at the waist. Just keep that in mind. And you can turn at both the diaphragm joint and at the waist, as you can see. So, quite a bit of articulation. Now let's take a look at the legs at the hips. You can bend the legs 90 degrees, but they do bowl outward, forming this upside down V shape. So they don't go straight ahead, unfortunately. And as for bending the legs backwards, you can forget about it because of the solid material used to sculpt the buttocks. It gets in the way, so you can't bend his leg backwards unless you want them to bowl outward. So they really want to go to the side, so you can forget about it. What about bending his legs to the sides like this? You can do pretty much a full split. It's not perfectly, straight. His legs don't go perfectly straight to the sides, but considering how bulky this figure is, this is pretty impressive. So you can strike some pretty dynamic poses with this figure, as you can see. Now let's take a look at the swivel. We don't have thigh swivel, but you get about that much swivel at the hips. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look at the knees. We have double jointed knees. The articulation is limited due to the bulkiness of the sculpt, but the knees are double jointed. One joint there, another joint there. Same for this one. So double jointed knees. Let's take a look at the feet at the ankles. We can rotate the feet 360 degrees, which is fantastic, as you can see. Now as for bending the feet at the ankles, we can bend them forward that much, bend them upward that much. Forward that much, upward that much. We can, actually we can, I'll take that back. You can bend them to the sides too. So you have quite a bit of flexibility at the ankles, and you do have toe pivot. There we go. So the articulation, considering how bulky this figure is, it's actually really good. Really good articulation, which is pretty amazing. So let me put him in a standard pose, just standing up. So I'm going to give the articulation, considering, you know, the bulkiness of the sculpt, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. It's pretty damn good. You can strike some pretty good poses with this figure. Alright, standing up. Now before we move on to the accessories, which are laid out to the right, you can see them, I just want to bring in another figure for comparison. Come on, Batman, stand up straight. There we go. This one here, this figure is by DC Comics. At least that's what I saw on the label. I guess DC Comics has its own brand. Probably some other brand, but on the packaging I just saw DC Comics. I think, don't quote me on this, I think I saw Mattel. I don't know, I bought this thing a few weeks ago. And I ordered it from Amazon. Cost me like $29 after tax and shipping costs. Well, no shipping costs because I had Amazon Prime, but after the tax it came up to $29 or so. So significantly cheaper than this one. This one with the shipping from Ami, which is located in Japan, cost me about $100. Without the shipping, I don't remember, but I know it was more expensive than this one. More expensive than this one. So the question is this worth more money than this, considering that this looks pretty close in terms of the color accuracy and the sculpt. The shape is a bit different, but it's still pretty close to what you get in the comic book. So much close, or should I so much close? So close that I would say it's comic book accurate. I would say they're both comic book accurate. They're within the range of comic book accuracy that is good, that is more than acceptable. However, this has significantly worse articulation, as you will see. You can't bend the head upward at all. It literally cannot bend upward. You can go downward, which is pretty good. You can turn the head 360 degrees. You can tilt the head to the sides minimally, much less than you can with the Medicom Mafex. You don't have a diaphragm joint. Should mention that this is made out of soft plastic. That's not a bad thing, I'm just pointing that out. This is made out of hard plastic, but this part here on this figure is soft plastic. And you can feel a solid sculpt underneath. I don't know what it looks like, but there's a solid body underneath there, which is pretty neat. But yeah, no diaphragm joint. You can't even turn him at the waist, so he's completely stiff torso-wise, which is unfortunate. His arms can flex out that much. Because these shoulder bits aren't articulate, I should say. Because these shoulder bits aren't articulate like they are on the Medicom Mafex, you can't adjust them in order to maximize articulation. So this is as far up as you can flex his arms, whereas you can do much more in the Mafex because these are movable, the shoulder pieces. So you do have bicep swivel, but you don't have double joints at the elbows, so this is literally as much as you can bend the arm up. So significantly worse articulation so far. You can't even bend the hands backwards or forward, or should I say outward or inward, whichever terms you want to use. That sucks, but you can turn them. Let's see. The legs can't really go forward. This is as far forward as they can go. I mean, you can really put some pressure, but it feels like it's going to break, which kind of blows. You can go backwards more than you can on the Mafex, though. But you're met with resistance by this soft rubber piece for the buttocks, which pushes it back down. It doesn't stay in place. And it's still not that great of a range anyway. You don't have double jointed knees. Actually, let me demonstrate this first. You can't really put his legs out to the sides either. So that sucks. And now to the knees. We don't have double joints at the knees. So this is as far as you can bend the knees. Significantly less than on the Mafex. And we don't have ankle rockers. I mean, you can't even turn the feet at the ankles. It's crazy. You can only go down that much, up that much. So very limited range, and we don't have toe articulation. You got this stiff rubber cape. Pretty standard fare for a figure in its price range, but obviously we get this nice wire cape with the Mafex. So this figure, in terms of the articulation, is significantly worse than the Medicom Mafex, despite the fact that the sculpt, I would say, is pretty close in quality, and the colors as well. So just keep that in mind. If you want to buy a figure of this iteration of Batman to stand on a shelf in a standard museum pose, then sure you can get this, but apart from that, it's no good. And this gun here came with this Batman figure. It goes in his left hand, as you can see, like that. So just keep that in mind. But I use it with the Mafex, so let me put him back here. Now we're going to take a look at the accessories. We have 2 additional head sculpts. Here's one of him wearing the helmet with a sort of neutral face expression. This is the one that came on the figure, but I swapped it with that one, which was not on the figure when I opened it for the first time. And this is a head sculpt of him without the helmet on, and expressing anger or anguish or rage, or whichever emotion you think this is. There's that. We get 1, 2, 3, 4 additional pairs of hands, which is really nice. We've got these hands that are sculpted such that, you know, he holds a gun or gun-like tool of some sort. As you can see, the fingers are sculpted in a way that suggests that he's holding a gun, and his fingers are on the trigger, or holding guns, and his fingers are on the trigger. Now you can put this one in each of these hands, and it holds onto them rather well. So that's pretty nice. We've got this other pair of hands that depict him as if he's grabbing onto something or about to grab onto something. We've got these hands that are in a sort of, We've got these hands that are in a sort of neutral open palm orientation / position. I don't know. So put these here. And we have these 2 hands, which are meant to interact with the effects. This one, which has the palms open and has this sort of plug protruding from the palm, is meant to attach to this this effect, like this. And this one is meant to depict him holding on to this. So there's that. So that's it for the accessories. Really nice set of accessories. Now I'm going to compare this figure to some others. In terms of the scaling, the other figures, apart from 2, are also by Medicom Mafex, and they are part of this line of Dark Knight Returns figures, or should I say this line of the Dark Knight Returns figures. So keep that in mind. So here's Batman in his blue and gray and yellow suit. Here he is in his black and gray suit with the big bat symbol that inspired the bat suit in Batman v Superman. Pretty neat. And here's Carrie Kelly, the version of Robin that fights along this iteration of Batman, Frank Miller's Batman. And here is the Joker. And that's how these figures scale together. They scale very well. And now we are comparing this figure to 2 other figures of armored Batman from The Dark Knight Returns. These are figures by Todd McFarlane, and they are part of his DC Multiverse line of figures. As you can see, they are significantly taller. That is because they are in 1/10 scale, otherwise known as 7-inch scale. And as you also can see, they aren't comic book accurate. Todd took quite a few liberties in regard to adapting Armored Batman into a three-dimensional action figure. It does not look comic book accurate. As you can see, the torso section of the armor doesn't stop midway down the torso. It extends all the way down to the waistline. As you can see, the arms are completely different. The shape of the shoulder armor is different. You don't have this section over here. I mean, you do have some upper section, but it looks very different. As you can see, it's just overall quite different. Look at the legs. You know, this is a completely different design. Well, I shouldn't say completely different, but a significantly different design. I mean, you do have the spikes on the bottom, like with these. But the overall vibe and aesthetic is quite different. It's much more realistic, I would say. I would say that these figures, this and this, I should say this figure, they're the same figure, just different colors. I would say this figure initially wasn't intended to be part of the Dark Knight Returns wave, but somewhere along the line, Todd decided to retroactively make them part of the Dark Knight Returns wave because they just look so different. All the other figures in the wave, based on what I've seen in photos, are comic book accurate, but this one is not. It's the outlier. So I really think this was meant to be a generic Armored Batman figure, and Todd retroactively decided to make it part of the Dark Knight Returns wave. But it is what it is. So let's take a look at the articulation. Let me put him back here. The head can look up that much, which isn't that great. And there's no diaphragm joint to, extend the degree to which he can look up. I mean, you can bend him at the waist, but that just looks kind of awkward. You know, bend him at the waist like that. Looks kind of strange. Yeah, so as for looking down, you have that much. Not significant, but you got something. You can move his head to the sides by this much. Seems to be just about what you get on the Mafex. Is it? Let me bring the Mafex over a second. Yeah, about the same. About the same. So that's acceptable. Let's take a look at the arms. Oh, actually, I should demonstrate the rotation of the head. The head can rotate 360 degrees. So yeah. Now, to the arms. You can't flex the arms out such that they become parallel with the surface on which he's standing. So the range is limited. It's slightly less than what you get with the Mafex, because on the Mafex the shoulder pads or shoulder coverings are articulate, but that's not the case on this figure. However, the shoulder pads on this head are made out of a soft plastic to sort of facilitate the flexing of the arm to some degree. So keep that in mind. Now, as for bending at the elbows, we have single joints. This joint is a bit stiff. Give me a second here. There we go. We have that. We get 90 degrees on this one. And this arm, it seems a little less than 90 degrees with this one. But no double joints, single jointed. As for the hands at the wrists, let's see, we can flex. All right, this is the default position, right? We can flex upward that much. That's pretty good. Backwards, that's pretty good. 360 degrees of rotation. Show the other side. Make sure this is on the right way. Okay. Holy shoot. Alright, this hand seems a bit limited. This hand seems to be more limited than the other hand. That's because of the way that the hand is sculpted, the orientation of the fingers. The thumb is not curled in because his hand is balled into a fist, and that is preventing the range that you get with the other hand. So you can't really bend this hand too much, but you can rotate it. But keep in mind that this figure of Batman does come with an extra set of hands. As you can see, each has an extra set, so you'd probably get more range with these ones. I'm not going to bother demonstrating that because this isn't really a review of these. This is mainly about the Mafex. I'm just doing this just for the hell of it. So let me get that back on. Yeah, so we can rotate at the waist as well. As you can see, we can rotate at the waist. As I demonstrated earlier, we can bend at the waist quite a bit. It's pretty good. Can't really bend forward too much, but you can bend backwards quite a bit. Can you bend to the sides? Yes, you can. So do with that what you will. Now, what about the legs at the hips? Can we bend them forward? Not really. This part of the armor gets in the way, so you can't really bend the leg upward, unfortunately. But you can bend backwards quite a bit, because this is made out of soft plastic, the buttocks area. Not only that, it's relatively smaller than the buttocks area on the other armored Batman figures, so you get quite a bit of range there, which is pretty good. Now, we can't really do much of a split. This is as much as you're getting, because once again, this part of the armor hinders the degree to which you can bend the leg upwards in any capacity. Let's take a look at the knees. We do have double joints at the knees, and we get a lot of range, much more than what we get with even the Mafex. So that's really good. Let's take a look at the ankles. We have ankle rockers, so we can do this. We can rotate. We can go down by that much. Go up. You can go up quite a bit, but this gets in the way. But this is made out of a soft plastic, so keep that in mind. And we do have toe pivot. So the articulation on this armored Batman figure by Todd McFarlane is pretty decent. It's pretty decent. This figure does not come with any accessories, apart from the extra set of hands that I just showed you a few moments ago. So that's that. So that's it for this review of Medicom Mafex's Armored Batman from The Dark Knight Returns. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Be sure to leave some comments below and to thumb this video up. Peace out. Thank you for watching.